Eating out can be both very expensive and very unhealthy. So cooking at home saves you money and keeps you healthy. These are the two most obvious reasons why we cook.
So, what happens if eating out can become cheap and nutritious? Well, this is the reality of a lot of digital nomads in Canggu, Bali, who earn in dollars or euros and have access to a wide range of healthy and nutritious eating options. And a lot of them choose to not cook and save that time to work or relax. So, this is what our video is about. We believe that besides cost and nutrition, there are still many other
Great reasons why you should cook. We'll center our exploration on the craft of cooking, this primitive and beautiful way of expressing ourselves and connecting us with the world around us.
We look at cooking as a creative pursuit. And just like any other creative pursuit, there's a lot of joy in the act of creating. When you make the thing and you can see it and smell it and taste it, it is a feeling of relief and satisfaction. In our pursuits as architects, there is this same feeling, and it is addictive. But an architectural creation can sometimes take years or even decades. In that sense, cooking really is a special pursuit. The longest a process can take is weeks, but it typically takes just a few hours. This short cycle from idea to the final creation has been a wonderful change for us. The other fascinating thing about cooking is how often you get to create. You can do it once, twice, or thrice a day, so there's a chance that you're putting out close to 100 creations every month. Practice, repetition, and feedback are cornerstones to improving your craft. And with cooking, you get that in abundance.
Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Outliers, uses the example of the Beatles to illustrate just how important practice is. In the early 60s, the band played a bunch of gigs in Hamburg, Germany. And not just any gigs. Some of these gigs could go on for 8 hours at a time, and the band was playing 7 nights a week. Gladwell claims that it was this intense practice and repetition that helped the band master their craft. But it wasn't just the quantity of practice. Dr. Erickson, who studies from the basis of the book, clarifies that the quality of practice is really important as well. The practice needs to be both deliberate and there needs to be constant feedback. And with the Beatles, these were real performances in front of live studio audiences, which was very difficult and challenging, and there was constant feedback. As we have seen with cooking, there is a lot of practice, but there's also a lot of feedback. Because everyone is an expert, and everyone will tell you something is not quite right. In this sense, cooking is intense and very challenging, but in some ways, these are the ideal conditions for you to master your craft.
I have been in some sort of creative profession since I was 17 years old, and it's been about 18 years of practice for me so far. It's been 10 years for Vidhi. There have been quite a few realizations over that time, but the biggest one seems to be just how much we love the act of making things, and how sometimes it can be both effortless and highly rewarding. Psychologists call this the flow state. To me, it almost feels like a big reason to pursue a craft is to be able to be in this state of mind. And in the modern world, it feels like less and less people are getting the chance to pursue a craft. In that sense, cooking can play such a vital role in our lives. Cooking's primitive history is also fascinating. Recipes are passed down across generations, and once the magic is revealed to you, it feels like you have made a connection back in time to your ancestors and to the entire human existence. From a creative standpoint, this means that we are working on a craft that's been practiced by the most craftspeople for the longest period of time compared to every other craft in the world. Based on this, there could be a serious claim that cooking is the greatest human craft of them all. Because the way human beings get better at things is by continuously improving on what's come before. It's the reason why smartphones keep getting better with time. Humanity is currently dedicating an insane insane amount of time and resources to the craft of making these devices. And every time someone makes a radical improvement, that becomes the starting point for the next generation of changes. This has been happening for 20 years, but with food, humanity has been at it ever since the beginning. We are talking about tens of thousands of years of research and development. To make this point clearer, let's look at a highly simplified history of bread. About 12,000 years back, humans decided to stop living a nomadic life so that we could domesticate food crops like wheat. That's some serious commitment. The innovation in the next 1,000 years centered around developing stone tools like a mortar and pestle so that we could grind the wheat into flour. It took another 1,000 years to figure out that you can hydrate this stuff into a dough and then cook it on hot stones to make it a chapati like unleavened bread. The part I was most fascinated about before my research was about yeast and fermentation. Well, this was an accidental discovery. When you forget the dough outside, wild yeasts can ferment the dough. And this marked the beginning of sourdough and other naturally leavened breads. In the next 10,000 years, the improvements were significant but incremental. Better machines to grind the wheat and better ovens to bake the bread. But about 150 years ago, there were two new massive breakthroughs: the isolation and commercial production of yeast as a consequence of Louis Pasteur's legendary discovery, and the industrial age and the advent of modern bread making machines. Both these moments are absolutely vital to the history of modern life, and they both played a vital role in the evolution of bread. But when we look at a piece of bread, what we see is something obvious. But if we really look at it, it contains tens of thousands of years of innovation. And with cooking, there is always this feeling of wonder. Who on earth thought of that? That's just insane. Are common reactions. And it happens almost every day. Cooking is a physical craft in an existence that feels more disconnected from the physical world every day. In the Indian subcontinent, a commonly cited reason for not enjoying cooking is how hot a kitchen can get. And I absolutely understand this. For someone new, if you are in a hot kitchen and the first few steps involve chopping onions and then frying up said onions with a ginger, garlic, and chili paste, that shit can get intimidating. No doubt. Cooking is not for the faint hearted. But at this point in my life, the heat, the intensity of aromas, and even the sweating feels like a relief to me. I know how gross that sounds, but hear me out. I have regular issues with kidney stones, and that's down to not drinking enough water, and I am getting better at it. But I also believe it's because I don't sweat enough. When I was a kid, I loved playing football. But a serious knee injury about 10 years back means that I can't get into intense physical exercise. So the intensity of the kitchen, the heat, the smells, even the sweat, I'm okay with it. In fact, I kind of love it. And of course, some things like the tactile feeling of kneading dough or polishing rice grains by rubbing them against each other, the smell of toasted spices or baking bread, the pleasure of painting the layers of patra or applying the cream to a cake. All of this can be intensely relaxing and even pleasurable. Working as architects has made traveling more enjoyable for Vidhi and me. When you know how things are made, it gives you a deeper appreciation of urban landscapes. And similarly, knowing how complex cooking is, learning spice combinations and the millions of tiny details and concepts involved in cooking will help you understand and appreciate what you eat. The humble vada pav won't stay humble anymore. Your knowledge of the magic, the inner workings, will bring it to life with every bite. In that sense, cooking is magical, and after you start, everything will change. It will help you see things that you didn't know existed before. I still remember discovering for myself the smell of curry leaves, or the difference between raw and toasted cashew nuts. or adding a bit of salt to chocolate. The discovery is never ending and is truly mind expanding. It's important to note that we are very lucky to be able to have this outlook. For a lot of people, especially women in patriarchal homes, cooking can become not just a duty, but an obligation, something that is required of you under all circumstances. We believe that as society progresses, it's very important that people can choose whether they want to cook or not cook. And if they'd rather spend their time to work or relax, that is their decision and we must respect it. People say that food is medicine, and for good reason. For us, it almost feels like cooking too is medicine. Medicine for some aspects of this modern life. Where at work, we keep climbing till we become managers. It's so hard to cultivate a real craft, where we have hundreds of things we want to learn, but not a lot that we can really pursue. Where only the now seems to matter, where technology is tech and can only be used to describe things like phones or cars. Where sometimes the peak of physical work involves typing on a keyboard or tapping away at a mouse or a screen. Don't get me wrong, I love my work as a designer. I love the software, and like every privileged guy in the world, I often gloat about how fast I can type on my mechanical keyboard. But it honestly feels like we need to strive for a balance between the digital and the physical. And cooking feels like something that could bridge that gap. Something that helps us engage all of our senses and encourages a level of creativity and craftsmanship that is missing in many of our lives.